So next up, we're going to be checking out author Alexander Hill's The Entire History of Uma Musume Cavalry, as speculated by a historical fantasy author. We saw the first half of this, and he's doing a lot of heavy lifting on the speculative part because he's trying to fit in what the Umas in history would look like if the exact same events happened, except for where the game explicitly said things were different, like there still being a kingdom of Ireland as opposed to being part of the UK. So it's not entirely the same, but it's so incredibly close. So he's going like, okay, well, it still had to be like this because it's explicitly still the world. How would that work out? I'm going to disagree with him on a lot of things, but I think for reasons that he's making intentionally and is correct to do so based on his premise. In other words, I'm going to geek out over history and then see horse girls, how would they affect it? It's going to be a weird video, and I'm here for this, man. Let's jump into it.
I say unfortunately because, you know, I'm not racist.
The
But
classic
I'm not
glitch.
racist at all. I'm not saying I hate. There's some good Assyrians. There's some good Mesopotamia. There's some good.
Oh god, it's just going through every one of these. There's a butt coming, isn't there?
Babylonians. Of course, some of them. I'm just saying, if my son comes to me one day and he says, "Pater, I found the one. She's the perfect girl. I want her to give you grandchildren, but she's from Assyria," I will sell all Adaxi, no problem. I'm just going to take him to the fields, have him watch the golden sunset, pull out my Glock 45.
While ancient Greece isn't exactly
God, yeah, that was exactly where I want. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought would happen. Oh, yeah.
known for its cavalry and tends to put a little more emphasis on the whole hoplite gig, the Greek city-states absolutely used cavalry in their battles, just not as much as the Persians. I'm split on
Which is funny because the most famous Persian battle is probably due to the movies, the Hot Gates, or the battle, was that Thermopylae? I think it was.
whether the ancient Greek Uma cavalry would make use of riders or not, as there aren't really that many factors that hinge on it, but I think riderless Umas are probably the play here, given Greece's rocky and mountainous terrain. This is the point where I want to bring up the conversation about Uma Musume discrimination. In the show, there's no sense of Uma discrimination at all, aside from the fact that they're kind of expected to, I guess, do horse jobs. That being said,
Okay. I thought he was stretching a few times before. Now we're really getting into something here. Just inventing up an entire new form of it.
this doesn't mean that Umas weren't discriminated against in previous eras. In ancient Greece, fighting on horseback was seen as a job for weak cowards who couldn't fight in formation with the phalanx. There was less honor in it. However, I don't
Why? No.
think Uma discrimination would be very prevalent, even with cultural attitudes like what the Greeks had. Throughout the ages of recorded history, there has been more time in which cavalry is useful than time in which cavalry is not.
And when said cavalry is a person who could probably kick you through said brick wall, clay wall, marble wall, I don't think it would work out pretty well. Usually, I could break you is a good reason not to piss someone off.
Infantry resurgences are usually fairly short-lived.
Also, I'm being told by Croc, Thermopylae is the term for hot gates. Oh, wow. I actually didn't realize that. I thought hot gates was a nickname. Didn't realize it was the actual word. Neat.
Before people find a new use for cavalry. And the fact that any average Joe could end up with a chud daughter kind of makes it a logistical nightmare to be racist against Umas.
I mean, has that ever stopped anyone?
Sleep, go to sleep, go sleep, little pig, go to sleep.
The fuck? I just, what? Okay, that was a thing. Oh, hey, thank you, Tensu. I'm going to just take this distraction quickly, not to think about whatever the hell was on the screen there for a second. Thank you very much. Won't be able to stay to watch, but would love if you could watch some Neb's Gaming Subnautica Supercut. Ooh, more Subnautica, hell yeah. They played it before the game was released, and one of their skits got modified and added to the game, and they got to voice it. Oh, that is actually so cool. How'd they get to play it before it was released? Good. I don't even care. That's awesome. Just going to pull this up over on the side.
I'm gone to sleep. Get time for you.
That is still
I bring
weird.
this all up because I want to talk about Athens.
You see, what if the Persians,
Delian
what if
League?
the Persian barbarians want to get your credit card information?
And their famous appreciation of
How much of that clip is he going to use? It seems like there's a lot going on there.
women.
Probably a lot.
Anyway, I wouldn't put it past Athens, who primarily fights with hoplites, to treat Umas worse than most places, although probably not worse than normal women, given the super strength and super speed and all that. But
Again, super strength, super speed. Usually that's a good reason of the, nah, we're just not going to fuck with that.
Sparta, I think, would love Umas. Even if they don't really have a cavalry culture, it's all, you know, survival of the fittest. Plus, the Umas would be pretty darn good at keeping that 80% slave population in line. None of
Oh, yeah, I forgot that was a huge thing of Spartan culture. Oh, also, Tensu, I will be able to check out the video, but I also saw that it was 8 hours long. I will jump around. That is more than I could possibly do. Also, missed the chat as well. Talk about injuries? Oh, no. What'd I miss? Did I? No. Oh, it's in early access. Oh, okay. Whew. I was probably talking to someone in chat about that. Okay.
us are without sin. After the decline of classical Greece with the
That's a guy's head
Peloponnesian
being,
War,
not
you
a
get
head.
some barbarians from the north coming down, talking about destroying the Persian Empire or some shit. Oh look, it's Alexander the Great.
Watch Alexander's Birth of a Legend by Matthias. It's peak. Malthius? I actually haven't seen that guy's channel. I have no idea what that is. Why do I feel I've heard this music before somewhere? It sounds familiar, but I don't know why.
Alexander's Macedonian army was so unstoppable, not just because of good
Until it got stopped.
tactics and strategy by Alexander, or even the Sarissa pike armies he fielded. A good chunk of Alexander's success can be attributed to his Hetairoi cavalry.
Yep, because he tied people up and then took them out in the back or the sides when no one was paying attention. Or when they were paying attention, but, you know, they had to pay attention to the guy with the spear right in front of them who would kill them if they stopped. And then if they got distracted, they got stopped being alive.
Which is one of the first examples of heavy shock cavalry being used in Europe. There are still no saddles or stirrups, but
Can we all just acknowledge he has good choice in fan art? Quite well done.
I think Umamusume Bucephalus would have
And it actually was Bucephalus, Alexander's horse. Oh, God.
absolutely carried Alexander on her back. While the last vestiges of Mesopotamian culture are getting curb-stomped, let's head west a little bit to the other locus of classical civilization, Rome. I don't have much to say about Roman cavalry since
What was Rome doing at this time anyways? This is such a stupid question, but I'm now just realizing, yeah, they would have been contemporaries. Huh. And apparently I missed specific words in a comment just to make everything more unstable. Yeah. Just for that, I'm going to read a comment wrong myself. And no, I mentioned, I got to mention, there's a fanfic based on the video. Wait, on this video? But it's actively focused on alternate history. In the most recent chapter is the start of the Bronze Age, so Uma god queens are a thing. So let me get this right. Someone disagreed with the video so much they're writing an entire narrative about, no, this is how it actually would go down. Unironically, that is actually the greatest compliment, both insult and compliment that I can imagine for someone who actually writes, I want to fix your world because your world building is not right. That's kind of awesome.
Rome
I
ain't
didn't find
really
that
my
later.
wheelhouse. You can tell that my expertise lies in the Bronze Age and the Middle Ages, given those are the periods of time that I'm talking the most about in this video. But the Romans would definitely be riding their Umas. And this is also a period of time where
Oh shit, they actually put a lot of work in the saddle. And the filigree around it and the is that just gold plated? No, that's the actual part of a harness, isn't it? Oh god.
saddles start coming into wider use. I always imagined Umamusume saddles would be more or less a child carrier, like, you know, the backpack where you put a baby, or if you're a millennial, you put a dog in. That way
They're not even wrong about this. Hell, my wife has thought about buying them. And we've considered it. Not the kid part, the pack for animals.
you can free up the Uma's hands to better balance themselves when, you know, they're fucking sprinting down the battlefield.
Yeah. Roman Umas. Yep. I feel I've heard that song before, but I don't actually recognize it. I really wish they had dubbed that, like the actual Umas. Apparently the show's good, I just never watched it.
The Numidians, however, of Carthaginian fame, I don't think would ride their Umas. Since the Numidian cavalry is made up of light-mounted warriors and use no riding gear at all, to the point where they didn't even have range.
Can we all just acknowledge the fact that the horse is snarling right here is just someone having fun with that? I'm just saying, it's like, yeah, they were very much aware of what they're doing on that. And Luna mentioned we've done this for 3 hours, we've added 2. Yeah, we have.
They just wrapped a rope around the horse's neck. I think it would be more sensible for the Numidians to just send in their Umas without riders.
He is getting a lot of usage out of this one. Understandably, though, it's a fun little meme.
And that probably makes Hannibal's crossing of the Alps a lot easier. If we move east over to
I would almost want to see someone just do that. That would be awesome.
India, Chandragupta has managed to carve out the Mauryan Empire using a confederacy of Himalayan tribes that use a composite mix of infantry and cavalry, which I think would be a riderless Uma situation. The Han Dynasty of China and...
I don't know if it's AI or not, but that is so funny. It's the cat with the Fu Manchu. Oh, that cat is either a hidden master who's about to end my day, or he's about to give me a quest, and I'm going to love it either way. He'll probably end my day when I try and pet him. His little fluff butt. Oh, my freaking. Ooh, look at the little fricker. Ah. If you look at a cat, you just immediately want to pet it. And you're allergic. That is the problem.
Actually, all the other dynasties of China in general will have a tough time breeding horses for war. I don't really know why that is, but every time China gets war horses, they end up needing more, like 100 years later.
Why are you crying? Late for school? Do you need someone to take you to school? Why is he in a hat? Take him to school.
So I would say
okay, that was a clip we just experienced. I have absolutely no idea what any of that implies, means, or was trying to make fun of, but it was definitely a clip.
I suspect that Chinese Umas have a high death rate, just like Chinese people.
A lot of wars. Casualties. Fuck no. Almost 10,000 soldiers. 20 to 30,000 civilians were eaten. Goddamn.
Good Uma stock was so rare and necessary that the Han Dynasty sent out an expedition to Fergana through the Tian Shan Mountains, the Tarim Basin, the Gobi Desert, and the Gansu Pass, before they were able to find superior Umas and introduce them into the gene pool. For context, this would be like us sending a mission to the moon in order to find oil. That's how incomprehensibly large of a...
Should I leave a comment letting them know that they're planning to send missions to the asteroid belt to find gold and platinum because they know it's there? Like, does anyone want to tell him they're actually unironically planning something like that? Because they are. Like, they're planning a mission to the moon right now for water. Like, this is a thing. Just throwing it out there. It's kind of a thing.
Task this was. But one of the biggest wars the Han Dynasty ever fought was a campaign of total war against the Xiongnu Confederacy, who were a proto-Mongol empire, I guess you could call it. Like the other horse archers we've seen in this video,
why they came down and
the Xiongnu
later.
were absolutely Uma riders. They might have been Indo-Iranians, or they were the ancestors of the Turks and Mongols, Probably the latter, considering the fact that Han China spent all of their civilizational fuel burning Mongolia to the ground so the Xiongnu would fuck off. China actually succeeded in completely decimating the land and forcing the...
Huh. So is this a picture of a recreation someone made? I wonder how they created this image altogether.
Xiongnu out, but completely killed their societal vigor, causing them to collapse soon after. But let's leave China behind to shatter into a billion pieces and follow the Xiongnu.
That's a few different kingdoms there. And at least a few of the names I recognize. Sun Quan, Liu Bei, Cao Cao. Do you know about Shizi and Kong Kai? Or Yong Kai there? Oh, there's the other ones up here. I just missed those as well. Dear God.
And follow the Xiongnu as they try to find a new home. These Xiongnu,
I'm not going to say it correctly.
Huns, made their way over to Pannonia in modern-day Hungary and... Oh, what's this? Rome is...
I paused on an interesting image. What the hell? Okay. Chat's keeping up fast. Chinese history is super funny. It's such a hellscape, according to Duck. And Pilot 1, thank you very much, too. Given some weird stuff that happened with cavalry during the Second Punic War, I don't actually know what you mean by that, and now I'm terrified to look it up. I would love to see a full write-up of this alternate history. What are we... Oh, God.
Falling. In 370 AD, a wave of Hunnic Umamusume stormed out of the Eurasian steppes, descending upon Rome in the midst of its death throes.
Yeah.
And Europe burns at the hands of the Scourge of God and his horse girls.
Peter, the horse is back. Yeah, it makes sense. This would happen. Also, yeah, Genghis Khan would have a horde of horse girls because they were horse-based. Yeah.
Peter, the horse is here.
Great medieval explorer.
How many videos is this guy doing? Oh, God.
I have explored the world from the sands of Ethiopia to the northernmost realms of Europe, where I have met with the people called Scandinavians, and today I shall bring you a report.
That was an IKEA behind them, wasn't it? He's not wrong.
As to their music, this is the worst.
In the wake of the fall of Rome and the short-lived Hun Empire, we arrive in the true Dark Ages, which is not the same thing as the Middle
At least for Europe, the Golden Age for other Eurasian civilizations, but Dark Ages sound cooler than late antiquity. Yeah, it does.
Ages, as that myth is somehow still making its rounds. The period between the fall of Rome and the year 1000, I would say, count as the actual Dark Ages, if there ever was one. There are a lot of moving parts here, so I'm not going to touch on everyone, but I will touch on the people who I think are important. First, the Germanic tribes.
Also, Inferno, you just realized Genghis Khan would have had kids with the Umas? I mean, there is a reason that in a significant proportion of the world, most people in some shape or form say they're probably related to Genghis Khan. And I don't just mean that as Asia. I mean that is a significant proportion of the world. And when you look at that, in current time, they start off with anyone can have a horse girl, so there has to be a recessive gene in there for anyone to already have it. Genghis Khan probably did it.
While I can't speak to most Germanic tribes, the Franks, who would build the empire that would eventually become France and Germany, are said to have been a cavalry people from early on, meaning they absolutely put their Umas to work. The Ostrogoths and Vandals also made immense use of cavalry, with the Ostrogoths being the first to place more honor on fighting on an Uma than fighting on foot. The Byzantine Empire, the half of Rome that survived the Dark Ages, began to imitate their primary rivals, the Sassanid Persians, building up a tradition of heavily armored cataphracts who would have been...
Oh, does this mean we get new horse girl art in like heavy armor? Because the last time we did that, it was a pretty good choice.
Umas with riders, both dressed in either scale mail or lamellar.
What
the Byzantine Empire.
okay.
So much so that the Byzantine political factions are based on what chariot racing teams they support. So Uma's death
Wait, that's actually how the political factions of the Byzantine Empire will run? Horse racing. I must have missed something. And according to Pilo, 1 in every 400 men are related to the Khan. Yep.
definitely play a huge role in Byzantine politics. I, for one, want to see blue Umas and the green Umas start a riot in Constantinople.
Most civil confrontation between the blue and the greens. Those damn greens.
The Arabs, meanwhile, under the Rashidun Caliphate, achieved much of their conquests by horseback, and prior to the dominance of Islam, had much stake in breeding strong horses.
I wonder where this is the breed for the Arabian horses came from. Or was it later on? Also, why is she saying, tie me to the missile and fire me at the finish line, I'm ready? I'm not even sure if that's a joke or not. Oh, God.
Anyone in this time period, the strongest Umamusume would be coming out of the Arab caliphates.
Oh, jeez. He's getting a lot of work out of these memes, man.
For Islam, Bedouin nomads already had a strong culture of breeding Umas, which had created a fierce and strong stock.
I can't tell if this is an utter failure of a picture or if someone is flexing so incredibly hard that they're feeding their, I'm going to just say Mustang because I don't know horses, out of their, I don't know what type of car that is. Okay.
They were stronger, faster, more durable, and smarter than Umas from other lands. Umas of the Arab caliphates would be prized above all others, kept well guarded from any who would try to steal their 9-star speed and 9-star long sparks. I say that in jest, but the Arabs would even start calling themselves the people of the lance, so they took this shit seriously. Back in China, during the Warring States period in Jing
Three Kingdoms, not Warring States. Ah.
Dynasty, the stirrup finally comes into play,
Oh, those were
allowing
historical
Chinese heavy
stirrups.
cavalry to make full use of shock charges and couching their weapons. This is
Oh.
also the first time that Japan adopts heavy cavalry and develops the role of the samurai.
Okay. Ooh, also, Croc, I'm going to pull up your comment. 1, thank you very much. 2, it's still loading. Fun fact. To counter muskets, winged hussars were using horses from Turkmenistan because they wouldn't stop charging when shot dead, unlike European ones. God damn. That's not a horse. That's a tank that just hasn't realized it's alive yet. Or dead.
In fact, the whole concept of Umamusume is based on a samurai who loved
This is all rumor. I remembered reading a few places and said, all confident, but here I can't find where I read it. So, okay, this is mostly made up, but it may be funny.
his horse so much he wished she was his daughter. The Vikings, on the other hand, would have been a riderless
Yeah, that doesn't sound so much like a Japan thing. That's more of a disgruntled old farmer thing.
Uma society due to their complete lack of cavalry tradition. But giving an Uma an axe and a shield would have made for one hell of a shield maiden. I wonder if the
Yeah! Finally, he said the obvious thing I've been trying to not badger about the entire time.
Valkyries and Umamusume gallop instead of fly. With the
Oh, yeah, because they rode winged horses. Would they just be Pegasi? Oh, God, we're basically turning into Equestria at that point.
Anglo-Saxons, having come from the area around Denmark
Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex.
in northern Germany,
Looks
I
very
suspect that the kingdoms of the Old English Heptarchy had a similar tradition of giving Umas swords and axes rather than hopping on their backs. And while fighting against Viking invasion, there wouldn't have been much impetus to change that. Meanwhile, continental Europe was being ravaged by the Magyars. I have a video about this you can watch here. It's East Francia, eventually the Holy Roman Empire, that will develop the feudal system that allows them to fund the equipping of heavily armored Umamusume and their riders to fight against the Magyars in the 960s, proving the effectiveness of knights.
He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be
Oh, isn't her shtick that she's not that fast or something? I
Blessed
don't know
are
much
the
about that
meek,
cat.
for
Wow,
they will inherit
horse.
the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled.
Okay.
Blessed are those who are persecuted.
End of the siege, bro. You are washed. Just give up. The castle's impenetrable. I thought so.
Medieval live streamer. Part 5. The Middle Ages. Oh my god.
Too until they left the front gate open. Rookie mistake, guys.
The Middle Ages in Europe are dominated by the feudal system, as you should know.
I'm sorry, that last meme actually hurts me a bit. Oh god. Oh, that actually just, oh. Is that what a standard live streamer is like? Okay, I have no right to talk.
If you remember anything from your world history class, which
remember.
in the world of Uma Musume, I think would be a little bit
Also, can we acknowledge everyone here just looking so done with this is perfectly accurate to anyone who has to sit around?
more complicated. Here's the thing. In order to make an Uma, a man has to get another Uma pregnant. So in order to breed powerful war horses, you need a man specifically dedicated to impregnating Umas. Or Christian monogamy is going to have to get a little more flexible. But the first option requires a whole new class structure that could have unforeseen butterfly effects on the rest of medieval society. It takes too much world building. On the other hand, creating a culture where
What am I looking at? Hey, Tor Enna, you're banging my Umas. Okay. I'm just going to move past this one.
a man has a wife and an Uma makes a monogamous society polygamous, and this brings its own boatload of consequences. In Ibn Khaldun's anthropological work, he posits the theory that empires only last about 120 years. That's 4 generations and some change. Meanwhile, Western anthropology has posited a theory that empires only last about 250 years. I think both are correct.
That's stupid. They last until they become decadent and ignore the problems that eat at them. And it doesn't actually matter on the time period because it can be done very fast and many times. Or very slow if they decide to go longer. Because Rome went for a very long time. And that's the ultimate empire because they did it first the hardest. Well, at least in that area. And then there's a Chinese empire, which... I mean, I'm saying that as if it's a single one, but frankly, no, it's just a roving door of people who were just fighting against each other and had their own empires competing against each other to have the most land. So that is just its own mess I'm not even going to get into. I don't know nearly enough about African history, and the American continent at this time period would have been utterly unknown to me, so who knows? And which honestly is fascinating because the more you learn about that, the more cool it sounds.
But Ibn Khaldun was writing from a Muslim perspective, and Islam is a polygamous civilization, or at least was at that time. I don't know how widespread polygamy is nowadays in Islamic countries, but back in the
Probably less than Salt Lake City.
Middle Ages, Islamic empires, at least the elites, would have 4 wives plus however many sex slaves they could get their hands on.
Do we need to tell him about some of the practices of European kings? Because it sounds like he's missing some of the practices of European kings. Or France. Nah, let's not get into that one.
And meanwhile, the West is a monogamous civilization. Due to the competitive gender dynamics created from any kind of polyamory, polyamorous societies collapsed about twice as fast as monogamous societies. So the life cycles of France, England, the Holy Roman Empire, Poland, Hungary, and Byzantium.
Again, France. That's so incredibly reductive. Like, it just... What? Okay, sure. Also, Pilot, you mentioned, but it wasn't even remotely an empire for all that time. Yep. I'm not even sure if you're talking about Rome or you're talking about China, because frankly, both would apply the exact same way if you're trying to apply China as being the entire Chinese empire as opposed to the individual dynasties, because the same would be true for Rome being an empire, except it was also Rome, it was the Holy Roman Empire, it was the Roman Republic. They're not the same thing. But it's just different people with the same area kind of trying to control it and think it's like, oh, we draw from this historical past. It's not continuous. Yeah, I'm not even sure which one he meant. There's just so much you can mean. Hell, you can even be looking at this right now going, England, oh, the British Empire, the French Empire, the German empires. There's been a lot. And a lot of them don't last hundreds of years. Some did, some didn't.
And other Christian kingdoms would have been drastically altered by polygamous cultures. So here's what I'm going to do. The Kingdom of Ireland involves Umas into its royal family. I think that's evidence enough to say that noblemen, at the very least, had wives.
Upon editing, I've realized it's possible that human women could just be left out of the equation altogether, but that has the large societal consequences. Also, because anyone can give birth to an Uma, which means having discrimination is stupid, because any one of them could have a kid who will crush you because you would be an ant by comparison.
And Umas both as consorts. And because I can directly point to the potential consequences of that and how that would alter history, I can make a more confident asterisk than if I introduced a new element such as a new class of Uma breeder, whose consequences I would be a lot less familiar with.
Yeah. I feel he is stretching on quite a bit of these sometimes. Also, Croc, thank you very much. No name, I'm not sure what part you want me to elaborate on, because I think whatever it is, we've moved past, so I'm not going to understand. And, King, or Kino, you mentioned the Aztec Empire and Mecha Empire. I know I'm trying to say Mecha as if it's a mech you walk around in, but that's not where you were going, I know. Also, Croc, you mentioned either become decadent or creates law like Liberum? Veto, making reform impossible. In short, 1500s when the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth made noblemen democracy. One person could veto anything. Yeah, that would be dumb. But also, that's usually just because a ruling class wants to entrench power. Such as feudalism, where it turns out the king isn't the person in charge because they needed to ask permission for all the people underneath them, like the barons, the lords, the dukes, to actually give them forces so they were less relevant. Which is also part of the reason the Holy Roman Empire broke down, because they weren't really the ones running the show. But everyone wanted the crown because then they could say they are running the show.
So we'll say that Umamusume,
I recognize this artist. Very good.
during the Middle Ages, were integrated into the noble class while being bred for war, giving Umas in medieval Europe immense status and prestige that would allow them to become members of the nobility themselves. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, despite the famed strength of the Arab Umma, the golden age of Islam has passed as the Seljuk Turks, riding on their...
according to Purple, that was based... excuse me, apparently I had to burp on that one. Based Bikini. Yep. I just watch comic does about other stuff all the time. And Duck mentioned 50% done with the Ultron Gundam. Ooh, please share pictures when you're done in Discord. That sounds awesome.
Stockier steppe Umas conquer all of the Middle East except Egypt and parts of the Levant, dealing a lethal blow to the Byzantine Empire at the Battle of Manzikert, and leaving Anatolia open for Turkic migration. The Crusades brought the European kingdoms, who relied on the sword and lance, directly into conflict with the Seljuk Turks, who relied on bows, meaning the Middle East became a battleground for foreigners using heavy Umma knights against light Umma archers. Additionally, a pattern starts to emerge in Islam as it enters its first dark age, that being the Mamluk pattern. See, Mamluks are slave soldiers that the Arab caliphates used as their personal armies in order to prevent nepotistic influence from infecting their courts.
And I'm assuming it then influenced them by infecting their courts.
The issue is, though, if you're arming a bunch of slaves, that's the issue. Most of these slaves are Turks and other nomadic peoples captured in war, so most of them are horse archers. Ironically, while early Islam was the best civilization to be in as an Ummah, medieval Islam would probably have a system of enslaving Ummas alongside their Mamluk riders.
But that also would still be missing the point of these are inherently superhuman people. I think that's the part about this video I'm just kind of not able to jive with, because he's working from the premise that the game is working of all of this has always existed, and it just kind of looks like our normal history. So we have to find a way to square this circle, or square circle to square. But when you really think about it, that's stupid because superhuman, faster, stronger, and easily tougher. It just, Purple's talking about this is the X-Men problem. Yeah, but on the other hand, X-Men works because super tech or technology, where in ancient terms, when, okay, yeah, we could fire arrows, but they could fire them farther. We could do swords, but they can hit harder. They can stab harder. They could throw rocks. They could take people out of range. It feels like everything about this is just trying so very hard to acknowledge, yeah, they were stronger, but also we're just going to ignore that. Like, significantly superhuman by comparison. And L, yeah, but the Uma still get killed by the sword or spear. Yeah, but if they had a sword and spear, they could kill faster. It just... it feels like it's trying very hard to ignore that.
As the Golden Age gives way to a more decadent civilization.
To give a better example, it's very hard to be oppressed by an ant when you're an anteater. It's just not exactly going to work out.
So when the Mamluks get tired of being slaves, they would conquer whatever swath of the Islamic world they happened to be in and became the new rulers. Then the Mamluks would assimilate to the sedentary society that was around them, lose their horse archer ways in order to live in luxury. Then they establish a slave army of horse archers to stop their nobles from assassinating them. And then those slaves would get tired of being slaves. Time is a flat circle. Anyway, the Seljuks become more decadent and are conquered by their former vassal, the Khwarezmian Empire. It probably sucks.
Oh, and I missed something? Sorry about that. Oh, yep, Croc, I did miss that one. Sorry about that. Oh, and adding to this fun fact, nobles were subjects of the state, but not king, and had the right to get rid of them when was bad. Also, king was elected. The king being elected is actually a surprise. Although I think I've heard of that in a few places. That said, they had the right to... Oh, you mean to get rid of the king, not get rid of the nobles. Oh, okay. And yeah, nobles were subjects to states, but not subjects of the king. Okay, I get where you're going on this one. I think I misread it at first. But yeah, I think I remember hearing about that, which is why I think if we're talking Holy Roman, that's why they were so powerful, because they basically had all the power and no one could do anything about it. Oh, Purple. Oh, you're asking Duck's opinions on Worm? I'm not sure if he knows it or not.
Really bad to be a Mamluk Uma, even more than it sucks to be a Mamluk soldier. Because slavery, as an institution, isn't exactly famous for its respect for consent. And that's all I'm going to say on the matter. The Khwarezmian Empire gets into power. They also become...
Something Thomas Jefferson would. And if you know exactly what I'm talking about, yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Become decadent and forget their horse archer ways, and then let's go check in on China.
How to say I will demolish that hole in Chinese? 我要搞坏那个洞洞.
China in the Middle Ages.
What? What? Also, Croc, you mentioned Poland wasn't part of the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, I wasn't aware of that, but cool.
Just hasn't really been keeping on top of their Uma game, even during their second golden age with the Tang Dynasty. Because the Tang are so expansive and huge, creating a multi-ethnic empire, they found it easier to just hire nomadic Turks and Mongols to be their cavalry instead of managing their own breeding program. This goes great for a few hundred years. The Silk Road opens up and China manages to maintain a path all the way to Uzbekistan by hiring these nomadic mounted archers and their Umas. Meanwhile, Chinese Umas can just live simple lives of farming without charging into battle against much stronger Umas and dying by the millions. And then the Anlushan Rebellion happens.
Casualties, 60,000 soldiers dead, and the 30,000 civilians were eaten. Yeah, that's a thing.
situation more in my blood message video, which you can find here. But basically, An Lushan was a Turkic general who was having an affair with the emperor's concubine and decided to rally all the Turks in the Tang government to help overthrow China. The Tang dynasty managed to suppress the rebellion, but the war was so costly that the Tang couldn't keep control over China and instead just shambled on as a walking corpse of a government for another few centuries before keeling over and...
I don't think a couple of centuries counts as walking corpse, because that sounds like a very long time to exist. Okay.
Dying. China shatters again, and there's a few more civil wars before it finally comes back together under the Song dynasty, and...
What?
Wait. What's going on over there? Oh, fuck! Genghis Khan has united all of Mongolia, and yet another wave, no, a tsunami of Uma mounted archers crashes
Yeah, that's about what I was waiting for. Knew Genghis Khan would come up in this one.
out of the Eurasian steppe. The Song dynasty cut in half, forced to flee south. The Khwarezmians, gone, reduced to dust. Tibet, crushed, the first steppe people to ever do it. Korea, annexed. Siberia, conquered. Russia, ground into paste, all except Novgorod. Baghdad, ash.
Is Novgorod the one all the way on the east or the one all the way up north? I actually don't remember which one.
And Hungary's next. All are united under the eternal...
The kid is on black. Genghis Khan. We did it. Now all is yet under the eternal blue sky. Oh my god. Yeah, it's definitely fan art. I only saw it down here. At first I thought someone actually did it. Oh my god. Who even does this?
blue sky of Tengri, trampled beneath the foot of Uma Musume.
O people,
someone having some fan art with us.
Sins.
Territories assimilate to the luxurious and decadent ways of life of the cultures that were there before, become lazy, and then are conquered by more vigorous people. As the Middle Ages progress and Europe rises out of the ashes of Rome...
I really love this old style of painting. It's not hyper detailed, but there's so much color at work.
Tides are turning against Uma Musume. In the Battle of Agincourt, massed English longbowmen proved fatal against an army of French knights.
This is this part, though, where I'm always being talked about. Or, wow, that was bad English. The part that I just came back to multiple times in this video. Horse girls were super strong. They could just use bows that normal people couldn't. They could go further and do more damage. Again, I know I mentioned this in the previous part, but they could unironically use Elden Ring style bows and make it work. I'm always going to harp on that part because it just seems like, yeah, they could be taken down at range. But like, yeah, but they could also take you down at range because bows that they could pull and move faster. This is my entire problem with the conceit of this video of history has to move similar to how it looked IRL. But it's also trying so very hard to ignore that, oh, and we're just going to incorporate Umas in it.
The first drop in the bucket. The Scots at Bannockburn and the Swiss at Laufen proved that if foot soldiers can hold their formation with iron discipline, even the strongest Uma Musume will fall to their pikes.
But if you, and hear me out, use giant fuck-off bows, it does a lot of damage when you can just throw at range a pike through someone and a few people behind them. Also, purple. Bows require a lot of training? Yeah. But if you have the strength to justify, Elden Ring style weapons IRL, it's probably worth it.
Hussites of Bohemia implement gunpowder weaponry against the heavy cavalry crusaders under King Sigismund, which...
Also, I'm just going to pull this up right now. Wow, this is not loading. And Doc, you mentioned this is the issue with the guy. He keeps thinking of the rider and Uma are separate things, except for the parts where he then just like, oh, but here they were the same thing, and acts as if the cavalry was just the horse girls alone, which he did mention in the previous invasions from the Huns. It was like, yeah, they would just be horse girls on their own doing their own thing because they would be the ones sent in on their own as the only one. It's just... And now, higher pound bows would be expensive? Yeah. But if you have super strength, you leverage that shit, man. Hell, even throwing giant rocks would be a very valid thing. That's the entire concept of a trebuchet. Throw giant rock. a couple Umas throwing rocks would become a very valid form of warfare because, well, shit, that just took out a couple houses is a really good way to get through a door. Hell, siege warfare would be nearly impossible because you would just get a big enough rock to a couple Umas and they would demolish any wall that could be put up. Because throwing enough huge-ass rocks will destroy a lot of shit. I mean, just boulder someone until they don't have anywhere left to go.
You can learn about that in this video.
Okay.
And the Ottomans used their Janissaries as foot soldiers to crush the Christian alliance at Kosovo.
Also, no name. You mentioned, I seem to assume horse girls are only ever on the cavalry side. No, I'm assuming they would be in other places. I think it's just this guy's acting as if they would only be the ones without the pikes, where a horse girl with a pike would just valid as a horse girl as the cavalry. It almost seems like if this was treated honestly, most warfare would devolve and people would have almost no point in it other than making sure the Umas were ready for the next battle and be the best ones for it. And where everyone else would just be sitting around and hoping not to face up. Because obvious advantages of being superhumanly strong are kind of absurd.
People all over Europe are discovering that with cohesion, footmen can hold off heavy cavalry, and Umas, although still members of the nobility, are falling out of favor. In the Middle East, after the Mongols' collapse, another Turco-Mongol warlord descended from...
Yep. Also, I'm just going to pull this up because I think this is kind of fascinating to the point. And Taryn, you mentioned, we don't know the ratio of Uma to human in population, or populace. So numbers in regular people could still be overwhelming for any Uma warrior. And that's entirely possible. Except the conceit he's doing here is every single horse would have been an Uma instead, which is kind of a batshit insane amount because there's a lot of horses, man. Like any mounted cavalry would just have 1-to-1 easily, unless you're doing 2-to-1 because a person riding and a person shooting. But I don't think most did that. And hell, that's not even getting into the people on chariots where that would be multiple horse girls for one person on the back fighting. So yeah, this is the problem when you overanalyze something, which I'm both doing and he is doing in his own right. So we're overanalyzing and overanalyzation. But I will admit it's kind of fun to think about where this could go. And I would love to see someone just write this out because I don't think it would ever be able to follow normal history because it would just be way too different. It would never work, which is probably the one thing that he's doing explicitly for conceit of how do you square this into making it look like normal history so things get similar by the end state where the games are.
Genghis Khan, out of Uzbekistan, ravages the Middle East. They just can't get a break, huh? This time it's the Timurids under Timur the Lame, who's basically just kind of a mini Genghis Khan. Oh. And in China, a peasant, with the support of the secret White Lotus Society, rises to power as emperor of the Ming Dynasty by revolting against the decadent Mongol Yuan Dynasty and restoring ethnic Han rule. But...
Also, I'm just going to pull up this comment as well when it loads. And I mentioned, that's one of the things with the Uma world. You would assume matriarchy would take a lot, would have taken off a lot more. Umas can be born to human parents randomly. Yep. Which would also be a great equalizer because anyone could suddenly be elevated by having the super-powered kid.
Cavalry isn't really a thing to bring back.
And also, matriarchy wouldn't always be the thing just because, well, if an Uma had a bunch of boys, suddenly their entire line is depowered. Unless the guys are also superpowered for just having to deal with that shit. I don't think that's ever mentioned.
In fact, anything remotely Mongol, the Ming wanted nothing to do with. This includes ethnic diversity.
If anything, what you'd probably see would be the one-child policy in China, but favoring girls explicitly. To the point where if we're looking at this, it would be almost, not so much matriarchal, but almost intolerably unbalanced civilizations where there just wouldn't be enough guys because, well, that would be a failure of not getting a demigod, essentially, to quote Iron mentioned essentially every single girl could potentially have a kid who's a demigod.
Horse archery, the Silk Road, and general societal dynamism, although they don't have this as bad as the Tang.
Renowned medieval musician.
Okay, and we'll cut this one here because we're right at the changeover period. Oh, jeez. this might sound like I'm actually taking a huge piss on this guy for, okay, one, that is not a phrase I probably should have used, but like that I'm taking a bite out of the entire idea he's doing and maybe not liking it. But I think what he's doing is an interesting way because he's working from the premise of the games show that this has always been the case, but also it's still the same history. How do you make this work? And he's trying to come up with a way that's like, yeah, if everything they said is real, this is what it would have to look like to still be human history as we know it, but with these differences. So it's so very different. I don't like the basic premise he's working on, but I like that he's trying to make it work. So I have very mixed feelings about it. He's like, I'm disagreeing with so much. He's like, this doesn't really make sense. But with the premise you're forcing yourself to work under to make it work with what the game says it is, this is what it would have to look like. Maybe, maybe not. And the earlier stuff has more, it could be because we just don't know enough. But as it goes further on, there's more details. Like, yeah, but that could never happen because this, but also it could because this is how it would have to happen for it to get to the games at this point. It's just, you see where I'm going with this one. I don't think he's wrong. I just think the game premise he's working under is blatantly not possible if you actually sit down to look at it, which is probably why they don't do historical Uma games. I mean, it would be funny as hell, and it would probably be very tongue-in-cheek and almost hilariously just, we're going to do our own thing, because anything with more historical accuracy would just be weird. Would there be a fan base for that? Probably. Yeah, actually, almost certainly, yeah. I mean, it's basically Gajinka of horses at that point. We know there'd be an audience for that. In purple, I'm overestimating Uma's strength. Entirely possible, but at the same time, being faster and being stronger are really easy ways to just throw things. Also, horses are pretty freaking strong, man. They can do a lot, and if you have fingers, a lot more options. I'm not talking like, superpower as in I could bench press a truck. I'm thinking more I could probably just do everything that the early parts of human history would value better all the time. Either way, though, I am enjoying this. Even if I am constantly just going, why? At this because of the premise. So, yeah, if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.